Hare Krishna. His Holiness Bhakti Vikash Maharaj has kindly invited me to speak in front of all of you, and he particularly wanted me to speak on the topic of Srila Prabhupada and his mission, and I will try to share my meager understanding of who Prabhupada is and what is his mission. I know that it's mostly Hindi-speaking camp. मेरा हिंदी का ज्ञान बहुत कम है, इसलिए मैं अंग्रेजी में बोल रहा हूँ, लेकिन थोड़ा थोड़ा बोल सकता हूँ. Being a second generation devotee, I have never seen Srila Prabhupada. I didn't have the good fortune to be in his close association. But somehow or other, I have been trying to practice Krishna consciousness for some time, studying Srila Prabhupada's books, reading teachings, them. And definitely the personality and message of Srila Prabhupada touched my heart. So I will try to say something which I feel is important on this occasion of this Shravanam and Kirtanam camp. Srila Prabhupada himself wrote about his mission and the difficulties of his task in this beautiful bhajan which he composed upon arrival in America, in Boston Harbor, Markini Bhagavata Dharma. And in this bhajan he says that words of Srimad Bhagavatam is your incarnation. How can I make these words understandable to these people who are covered by the modes of Rajas and Tamas? He himself says that these people who are completely covered, whose consciousness is totally covered, it's very difficult to penetrate these coverings. His ardent desire of his heart was to save these people, and to save these people basically to give the taste of Krishna. Ultimately, what is bhakti? Bhakti is an amazing taste of relationship with Krishna. Bhakti is bliss. Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains that the energy of bhakti is the combined energy of knowledge and bliss. Jnana Shakti and Ananda Shakti. These two Shaktis, Sanvit Shakti and Hladini Shakti, combining together, they constitute the energy of bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada knew that without bhakti, everyone is suffering, no matter what one thinks. So many people, if you ask them, practically everyone will say, yes, I'm happy. Only we know that they are not happy. It's a bold statement, but actually this is not so bold because we have been in their position and we know what it means to be under the modes of material nature. Yes, sometimes the modes become a little lighter, the pressure of the modes are not so strong and people think they're happy. But there is no positive happiness in this happiness which is derived from the modes of material nature. So ultimately, Prabhupada's mission was to make people happy. And he knew that there is only one means to achieve this success, to achieve this end. And he says about this in this Markini Bhagavata Dharma. He says that for that, the people have to get the taste of Harikatha, the taste of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam itself or himself says in the very beginning that if people dharmaksvan nushtitach pumsach vishvaksena kathasuyat not padayat yadiratim shrava eva kikemalam. Whatever people would do, it's a waste of time if they don't get taste of Krishna katha. Vishvaksena kathasuyat not padayat yadiratim na utpadayat. If rati or attachment to these words of Srimad Bhagavatam does not take place, does not arise in the heart of the living being, then whatever they do is the waste of time. Srimad Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami, as the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, is very emphatic. He says, Shrama, Eva, He, Kevalam. He makes three emphatic statements. He, Eva, Kevalam. It's just Shram. Shram means useless waste of time, just hard work without any good result. Whereas if we get the taste, the real taste for Krishna Katha, for Krishna consciousness, then everything which we do makes sense. Everything which we do in our life becomes very important. So Srila Prabhupada says this, how to solve this problem. He specifically is pondering what to do. I have arrived here, and he saw the dark smoke of tamas and rajas, which is hovering over America and basically all the Western countries. This very deep covering is there of tamas and rajas, covering of the soul, covering of the consciousness. How to penetrate this? And in this moment of time, Prabhupada says that only by your mercy they can get some taste. I am ready to deliver your message as it is, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam as it is, without any alteration. But at the same time, he says that only by your mercy, by your causeless mercy, O Krishna, who put all these people in Maya, these people will be able to understand or to get some taste. Actually, in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, this message or the main teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam is already there. In the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Savai pumsach paro dharmo yato bhaktirat hokshaja haitukiya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. To be happy.
Blasting.
Okay. To be happy, to be satisfied, the soul has to perform something by which he can come to appreciate bhakti. Yataha bhaktira dokshaje ahaitukiya pratihata. Ultimately, what is the main occupational duty of the human being? To do something which will bring them to bhakti. And this bhakti should be pure bhakti, not mixed bhakti. Mixed bhakti is a very common thing. Mixed bhakti, there's nothing special in mixed bhakti. Even the Buddhists, they practice some sort of bhakti. Everyone is practicing some sort of bhakti. Everyone is offering some prayers. Everyone is doing something. But the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is conveyed by our acharyas, starting with Rupa Goswami, who got this teaching directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the message of pure bhakti. How to get people who are impure to appreciate pure bhakti. That's the problem. And in this moment of time, when Prabhupada is standing there in the harbor of Boston, Upon arrival from America, he is pondering what he should do. And he says, only by your mercy, only by surrender, just make me dance, make me dance, make me dance as you want. And we know that ultimately Krishna made Srila Prabhupada dance as he wanted. That's the miracle which happens. If we become completely open to the will of Krishna, he will make us dance as he wants. If we say something, I want this, I don't want this, Krishna says, okay, do whatever you like. This whole material world is for those people who want to do what they want to do. I wanted to tell a few stories about Srila Prabhupada, about few anecdotes of Srila Prabhupada, which I read in the books of his disciples, in the memoirs of his disciples. And by saying this, I remembered one little story which Srila Jayapatak Maharaj is telling. That Srila Prabhupada once was in his room and he saw a cockroach.
Sorry. There's so much blast.
Okay, so what shall I do? Speak like this?
No problem. Now you are free to speak.
Okay. Okay, is it okay now? Okay. So it's a very nice story. Srila Jayapatak Maharaj says that the cockroach was crawling in Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada took this cockroach very lovingly, little creature. He came to the window. He put the cockroach outside of window and says, the whole world is for you, enjoy it. So basically, Krishna created this world for us to enjoy. For those people who want to do what they want to do, the whole world is there. You know, we can crawl on the surface of this world as much as we like, as this cockroach. Srila Prabhupada gracefully showed the main understanding of what the conditioned life is. But if people sincerely try to surrender to God, then they become instruments in the hands of God, and Krishna starts creating miracles. And what Prabhupada did is a sheer miracle. There's nothing less than miracle. It's a complete miracle what he has achieved. And I wanted to tell a few stories how he achieved it, which means he achieved it. But again, ultimately, what Prabhupada wanted, he wanted people to get the taste of Krishna and Krishna katha. Ultimately, this is most important. This is the turning point in the conditioned life of any living entity. Before we get taste for Krishna katha, Vishvaksena katha ruchi or Krishna katha ruchi, this is one portion of our life. And after we get the ruchi, the taste, it's a completely different story. So this very ardent desire was within Prabhupada's heart, and it was moving him and directing all his movements in this earth. We know, of course, we all read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and we all remember this very memorable event when Prabhupada was speaking in San Francisco in front of thousands of hippies who came to listen to him. And of course, Prabhupada knew that he cannot present very high-sounding philosophy in front of these hippies. So he just said a few words and he started chanting Hare Krishna. And then he said, on the way to the stage or on the way out of the stage, this is not the place for gentlemen. This is not a place for sannyasi. But nevertheless, Prabhupada was ready to go to any place, even though this place was not suitable, strictly speaking, for the sannyasi, just for this purpose, just to give people some taste for Krishna katha or some taste for Krishna mantra, for chanting of Hare Krishna. This desire was the most prominent in Prabhupada's heart. I want to give them some taste. I want to give them some taste. So one particular story actually struck me very much, which shows the limit of Prabhupada's compassion. Once, one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, actually it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was a member of this community, he said that there is a community of hippies near San Francisco, or near Los Angeles, whatever it was, Morning Star Ranch, where hippies are living, and they're inviting Prabhupada there. And he said, Prabhupada, but unfortunately these people are nudes. I don't know if you know what it means. It basically means that they're walking around naked. This is a special community of people who are walking around naked. Very civilized form of life. And he was a little hesitant to offer this to Prabhupada, but to his surprise, Prabhupada says, yes, we are going there. No matter whether they are dressed or not dressed. Let them hear about Krishna. So, and the head of this community, Lou Gottlieb, he personally came to pick up Srila Prabhupada to bring him to this community. And on the way, and this is very important statement which Prabhupada has made on the way to this community. On the way, this person, Lou Gottlieb, started talking. He was talking about Ramakrishna and Aurobindo and whatever yoga he has heard about, whatever philosophy he has heard about. And Srila Prabhupada made a very important statement, very important for us. He was listening to this talk of this person, and then he says that when you have decided for your path, and basically this person wanted to impress him. I know this and I know that, and I heard about this and I heard about that. And Prabhupada said, if you decided for this path, to study and to learn, and he was asking, what do you think about this philosophy and that philosophy? And Prabhupada gave a very simple answer. If you decided for your path, then to study other philosophy is the sense gratification. There is no need of doing this. It's just for you to think that how intelligent you are. And Prabhupada put him in place, and he stopped speaking about this. And Prabhupada came to this community. And then, it was a very unusual or peculiar scene. All people are walking around naked. And the only one dressed person is Prabhupada, basically. And few of his associates, they were also dressed, of course. Although some of them were from this community before. So they had some strong samskaras of being there. And there is one particular statement which actually struck me, which Prabhupada made. It was a very, unusual sight to have somebody who is dressed in this community. Everyone is undressed. So a few people came to see Prabhupada. And one of them particularly was totally undressed, and he came and started staring at Prabhupada. He himself tells this story. And Prabhupada looked at him with such a compassion. And he said, what are you doing? And at that time, he was working in the field and he was planting potato. And he said, I'm planting potato. And Prabhupada said, I don't mean this. I mean, what are you doing with your life? So this is, again, a statement which actually encapsulates Prabhupada's mission. He wanted to remind us, what are we doing with our life? We can spend our life in millions of different ways. We can waste our time in millions of different, varieties, this way and that way. But ultimately, Prabhupada is looking at us with a very stern look, and he is asking, what are you doing with your life? And when Prabhupada started Kirtan, that was miraculous, because everyone started chanting with him. And Prabhupada didn't speak again. His method initially was very, very simple. He was only speaking to those who was ready to hear. For everyone else, he was just chanting Hare Krishna. And everyone ecstatically was chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. And Prabhupada, while leaving, he gave just one instruction. But the power of his words was so strong that just giving this instruction, he completely changed the life of this community. Prabhupada, while leaving this community, says, go on chanting. This person who was the head of this community, he says, amazingly enough, more than half of our community went on chanting Hare Krishna again and again and again after that, for many, many days and months. And many people actually dressed after that. They dressed, and some people joined Srila Prabhupada and left this community. So, again, in my understanding, this visit of Srila Prabhupada to this hippie community is somewhat symbolic. Srila Prabhupada is the only civilized person who came to these jungles of uncivilized West. And his message is simple. What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life? Just answer these questions. Just look in your heart and answer this question. What are you doing with your life? And then go on chanting. Just go on chanting. Go on with this Hare Krishna mantra. Everything else will come after that. And again, as I said, Krishna, he is basically following the order of his devotee. Of course, his devotee says, you order what you like to do, but Krishna at the same time knows the desire which is there in the heart of his devotee, and he tries to fulfill this desire. We every day chant these Damodarastakam prayers. And the meaning of these Damodarastaka prayers is to glorify the love of Mother Yashoda, who was able to bind Krishna. She was so powerful. We are glorifying this power of love. And because Prabhupada's desire to give Krishna consciousness was so strong, he was influencing people by different ways. Sometimes just by looking at them. I wanted to tell another story which, again, struck me very much and impressed me very much. And of course, Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says that bhakti can be transmitted through the words. It can be transmitted just by seeing a pure devotee. Just by seeing Krishna and by seeing pure devotee, one can get some bhakti. Srila Rupa Goswami, he gives an example of Krishna visiting Mithila while he was visiting his devotees, Shrutadev. But one particular little incident is also very significant. And ultimately, if we want to follow Srila Prabhupada, we have to develop the same burning desire. I want to give Krishna consciousness. I want to give people some Krishna consciousness. This particular story actually described by one devotee who met Srila Prabhupada before he became devotee. And he didn't meet Srila Prabhupada as such. He saw Prabhupada on the ship. When Prabhupada's ship was arriving to this harbor, to Boston Harbor, then this devotee, at that time he was not a devotee, he was a sailor. And he was in another ship, and his duty was to welcome the ships which arrive to this harbor. And to welcome the ships which arrive to this harbor, he is supposed to lower down the flag of America. So what he says, it's a very touching story. He says that I saw this Jaladuta, this boat which brought Prabhupada to America. And he says, I started doing my duties, I was in this other ship, and all of a sudden I noticed a small, short person dressed in orange robes. And this person somehow rather attracted my vision. And I looked at him, and I caught his glance. And he was looking at me, I was looking at him, he was looking at me, I was looking at him, and he said, I forgot of doing what I'm supposed to do. Because his glance was so penetrating, it was coming so deep to my heart. And then Prabhupada waved his hand. And at that time he started lowering the flag of USA, or maybe raising the flag of USA. Anyway, he said, symbolically, now I understand that I was actually welcoming Prabhupada, the pure devotee of Krishna, to America by doing this manipulation with the flag. I was actually surrendering the whole America, the whole nation to the state. And he said, just a couple of years later, I became a devotee, I surrendered to him. And I came to him, he eventually got sannyas at one point. He said, I came to him when he gave me initiation. Just one glance. He said, this one glance was enough for me to understand that I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So he eventually met devotees, he came to Prabhupada, he got initiation from him, and after initiation, he sat down with Prabhupada in one room and asked, Prabhupada, what can I do for you? And Prabhupada read these concluding verses of Bhagavad Gita, famous verses which actually describe his mission. In the whole world, those devotees who are teaching this Bhagavad Gita to other devotees, they are doing the highest service. In the whole world, there is no servant more dear than them to me. And Prabhupada said, just preach this message to everyone else. That was the methodology of Srila Prabhupada. By hook and by crook, he was giving some taste to the devotees. And by giving taste, he was engaging them in this mission of preaching Krishna consciousness. He was giving them this desire to preach Krishna consciousness and actually inspiring them to do this. And devotees were doing complete miracles by being inspired by his glance and by his teachings and by his integrity. This is another story which I wanted to tell about Prabhupada and his desire to preach, his desire to give some taste. And of course, what actually is the hindrance for us to get the real taste of Krishna consciousness? Once Prabhupada said a very amazing phrase. I unfortunately don't remember exactly how he put it in English, but he said that there is our irrational unwillingness to surrender to Krishna. So part of his mission, very important part of his mission, was to preach to new people. And in the beginning, he was the only preacher, and he was preaching to new people. He was ready to do anything. He was going everywhere and preaching Krishna consciousness. But very soon, he started concentrating on preaching to the devotees. At one point, he even said, there is enough people who are coming here. Now it is the time to boil milk. And boiling milk basically means to help devotees to advance. By that time, many of his disciples, inspired by his example and by his energy and by his ecstasy which he was emanating around him, were preaching to other people. And Prabhupada was concentrating on this. And this is very important part of Prabhupada's mission as well. Because there is a resistance within our heart, within our soul, within our consciousness. This irrational unwillingness to surrender to Krishna. What happens with the devotee, usually we come to Krishna consciousness with the desire to surrender. We understand something about Krishna. We understand that Krishna is God, Supreme Personality of Godhead, that I have to surrender to Him. And initially, everything goes okay. We get initiation, first, second initiation. We started doing some regulated devotional service. We start chanting Hare Krishna. But then at one point, we encounter very strong resistance within our heart to go further. Actually, this is a very important point in any devotional life. When we come to this point of anartha nivritti, but usually people, even though they approach this point, they don't go very deep to this period of anartha nivritti. Somehow or other, they keep the anarthas. Why do they keep anarthas? Because they consider anarthas something valuable, artha. Anartha is something useless. But because we are holding for these anarthas, we don't want to give them up. So the part of spiritual master's mission is to help the devotees to point out the anarthas. And that's very painful and that's very ungrateful part of spiritual master's mission, to point out these anarthas and to help the devotees to eradicate these anarthas. And I wanted to tell a very beautiful story, which I myself found very instructive, how Prabhupada dealt with it. He dealt with it in a different ways when he would encounter with some manifestation of anarthas. And basically, all anarthas is just our spirit of independence. We do want to protect our independence, to protect our right to be independent in this world, to do whatever we like in this world. And this particular story happened with one leader of our movement, sannyasi, who tells this story, but to be politically correct, I will not tell this story. I will not tell his name, but still, you know, it's a very beautiful story. He said, I joined very young. I was only 15 years old when I joined. And I was there in the temple and my life was completely, you know, changed. And he was from quite a well-to-do background, from a rich family. And he was living in the temple and he was doing some menial service, washing toilets, which he never did in his life. His whole life he never washed toilets. His whole life he never washed pots. So, and at the same time his family was bombarding him, sending him letters, calling him, saying, what are you doing? You're wasting your life. You're completely spoiling your life. Come back, come back, come back, come back. And ultimately his girlfriend wrote him a letter and said, you please come back. I need you. I love you. So he was in complete fix because at the same, from one point he wanted to surrender. He liked Srila Prabhupada. He liked his mission. He liked he somehow or other, he got some taste of chanting, but at the same time, the pressure was too much. He was pulled, he was torn apart. His family is pulling him here, and there is some force which is pulling him there. So he was thinking and thinking and thinking. Ultimately, he decided to bloop. He decided, I shall go. But he couldn't go himself. He first wanted to prove that Srila Prabhupada was wrong. He needed a good excuse. He wanted to go with a peaceful heart. So he wanted to catch Srila Prabhupada on some contradiction. Srila Prabhupada gave the lecture, and there was a darshan, and devotees were sitting there. So he got some courage, and he raised his hand. And he said, Prabhupada, you said that it is Krishna who created everything. And Prabhupada said, yes. And then he said, but Prabhupada, you also said that Krishna wishes well to everyone. He is well-wisher of all living entities. Is it true? Prabhupada said, yes. And then he said, this was his main point, but Prabhupada, why did Krishna create Maya? Because Maya is inflicting sufferings to all the living entities. Krishna is the well-wisher. He wishes well. Why did he create Maya? Isn't that a good question? Inside, he thought, now Prabhupada will be baffled, and then I will go. My mission will be accomplished. Prabhupada looked at him very attentively. And then he said, it's not Krishna who created Maya, you created Maya. Krishna created everything else. And you created Maya. And it's a fact. It's our desire. Ultimately, it's our desire of being independent. Forced Krishna to create Maya, to create this illusion. And he said, I decided to stay. He said, initially I was so shocked. I was looking around, I created Maya. And he thought, everyone is looking at me and showing me, pointing at me, you created Maya, you created Maya. Shame on you, shame on you. But ultimately, this is what it is. This is, again, the part of the ungrateful mission of the spiritual master, to show this is Maya. This is where Maya is. This is your anartha. This is your problem. This is your independence. Because it's difficult, it's hard. Once Srila Prabhupada said, unfortunately I couldn't find this quote, but I definitely read this quote, that Prabhupada said a very striking statement, very amazing statement, very profound statement, that sometimes you can hide yourself from Krishna behind Krishna consciousness, behind the show of Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada said, we're trying to protect our independence sometimes even by show of Krishna consciousness. I'm surrendered. I'm doing everything. I'm doing whatever I can. But at the same time, we are protecting our very deeply rooted independence. And again, in this opening statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Ahaitukya pratihataya yatma suprasidati. You can only experience the highest happiness only if your bhakti is pure, not otherwise. And therefore, again, since this mission of Srila Prabhupada is so hard, to give this pure bhakti to everyone, to really give this taste of pure bhakti. Yes, initial taste is there. Yes, the spiritual master gives initial taste. People chant Hare Krishna, they get some taste. But then he has to bring the devotees to this point of complete surrender. Because you can only experience this taste after complete surrender. This nishta, the stage of complete surrender, is the stage where you have to relinquish all your independence. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, while explaining the peculiarity of this stage, he says that this stage is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 3rd verse of Shikshashtakam. Trinadapi sunichina tarorapi sahishnuna amanina vanadena kirtaniya sadahari. Actually, all the preliminary stages, this is not even bhakti. And even this stage is not bhakti. The bhakti, real bhakti, starts with ruchi. Srila Rupa Goswami makes these amazing statements. He says that, this Sharanagati is not bhakti. Jiva Goswami explains this in Bhakti Sandarbha. This is the doorway to bhakti. This is the only doorway, very narrow doorway, very low doorway, where you have to really, bend your neck and bend your head to enter this doorway. Doorway is Sharanagati, but it's not yet bhakti. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this complete Sharanagati comes when you realize this 3rd verse of Shikshashtakam. Trinadapi sunichina tarorapi sahishnuna. When you become more tolerant than a tree and more humble than the blade of grass. When you're ready to respect everyone and don't expect any respect in return. So everything before that, including anartha nivriti, is just bringing you to this point. Bringing you to this point and giving you this taste. Before that, you really have to work and overcome different anarthas. And one of the most important anartha and one of the most important difficulty, which actually deprives us from having the pure taste of bhakti, is the tendency to be self-deceptive. This self-deception or kautilya, when we are crooked, this crookedness of our intelligence, when we are trying to pose as surrendered, not being surrendered, when we are trying to sell our own desire as a desire of Krishna. That's a very difficult part. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this weakness of heart, kautilya, is there. He points out the 4 fundamental difficulties of the heart, fundamental weaknesses of the heart. First is tuchha sakti, the attachment to something which is really insignificant. We're attached to our body, we're attached to our family members, we're attached to whatnot. We're attached to our maya, to our independence. And then kautilya comes. Kautilya, it's a protective mechanism. It's a psychological protective mechanism by which you protect your right to be attached to what you are attached. I have a right to be attached to all this nonsense. And we explain it in so many different ways. And again, this is the important mission of the spiritual master, and definitely important mission of Srila Prabhupada, is to point out where our deceptiveness and how our deceptiveness manifests in us. How we are trying to cheat ourselves. And ultimately we are cheating ourselves of happiness. While doing this or practicing mixed bhakti or trying to, hide our, anya abhilash, all tendencies to desire something else, by doing something else and by being attached to something else, we are cheating ourselves of happiness. So the beautiful story which I wanted to tell about this, beautiful anecdote of about Srila Prabhupada, how he revealed this tendency to deceive ourselves and others, is actually told by Badrinarayan Maharaj, and it's one of my favorite stories about Prabhupada. It's the story about peanut oil. Badrinarayan Maharaj says that in Laguna Beach, there was a temple president who was a little stingy. You know, temple presidents sometimes have to be stingy. You know, they're short of money. So he found some very cheap peanut oil. And he was, all the prasadam was cooked on this peanut oil. And every devotee became sick, and they were about to make revolution against this temple president. Peanut oil. And they were coming to him, and he said, no, peanut oil is very good. It's actually very healthy. One of these arguments, it's very healthy. It's good for you, this and that. But devotees still were not satisfied. And ultimately, he decided, I got a statement from Prabhupada. I got Prabhupada to say that peanut oil is good. So he was thinking how to get Srila Prabhupada to say this. So he devised a plan. And, there was a darshan of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada came to Los Angeles or Laguna Beach, I don't know exactly where. And they were sitting, many devotees were sitting. And Srila Prabhupada was very relaxed, in a relaxed mood. And he thought, I will ask the question in such a way that Prabhupada will give the necessary answer. It's a special art to ask spiritual master questions to which he will have to give the answer which you expect him to give. You should practice this art a little bit. Of course, I think it will be difficult with Bhakti Vikash Maharaj, but if you're clever enough, it may be possible. Anyway, it's a joke. You're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to be very sincere. When you're approaching your spiritual master, you really have to be open in your heart. You really have to be open to any answer which he gives. But anyway, this devotee was habitually clever, and he wanted to get the necessary answer from Prabhupada. And he said, casually, when Prabhupada was in a relaxed mood, casually he said, Prabhupada, can we cook on peanut oil? Peanut oil is very good. And Prabhupada, he made a face. And he said, no, only good oil is ghee. This is the last thing which the temple president wanted to hear, because ghee is expensive and peanut oil is cheap. So he was very determined. So some time passed, Prabhupada answered some other questions. And he said, but Prabhupada, sometimes can we cook on peanut oil? The peanut oil is so good, it's very light. Very light, it's easy to digest. Prabhupada again made a face and said, peanut oil is the 5th class oil. Again, this was not the right answer. This is not what he wanted to hear. He was still very determined. He needed to get the right answer from Prabhupada, because he wanted to quote it to other devotees. Prabhupada says we can cook. So after some time, he again raised his hand and said, Prabhupada, but Prabhupada, but sometimes we can cook. Can we cook peanut oil, just little peanut oil? And Prabhupada said, cook in whatever oil you like. He was jubilant. He already, thought, now I will come to devotees and I will say to them, Prabhupada said, cook in whatever oil you like. This is Prabhupada. Prabhupada said this. And his mission was accomplished. He was ready to leave Prabhupada, and he turned his back to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, wait. Once I had a friend, and this friend at one point ate many pakoras fried in peanut oil. And Prabhupada stopped, and everyone was silent. And then this temple president said, and what happened? He said, Prabhupada said, he died next morning. So this is how the peanut oil question was closed. Once and forever. You know, Prabhupada gave an answer. He didn't give him even a small gap, a small little gap to be deceptive. So this is actually what it is. I wanted to tell this, that this is the mission of spiritual master and mission of Prabhupada actually, to point out where we are deceiving ourselves. What is the self-deceptiveness? Because we ourselves will not be able to understand it. We ourselves will not be able to discriminate or distinguish. Very naturally, we accept our own frailties and our own weaknesses as a good point, and our own anarthas as something which is valuable for us. So, anyway, this is just a few anecdotes which I wanted to tell you about Prabhupada to illustrate that his mission was to bring something real, not to bring something cheating, not to bring something which will ultimately, teach people, cheat people from their real happiness. And Prabhupada, yes, he was adamant on this. He was uncompromising when it came to this. He was very lenient in one sense. He was very open-hearted. He was giving Hare Krishna mantra to everyone. He was ready to give it to each and everyone. He was eager to give it to each and everyone, but not at any cost. He actually wanted us to really practice pure Krishna consciousness, which is not easy. And it will take some time. But again, coming back to the beginning of my little talk, is that to achieve this purity, we have to be constantly in contact with this sound vibration of Srila Prabhupada, his teachings, and Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada himself in this Markini Bhagavata Dharma, in this beautiful bhajan, he quotes these verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, starting with Srinvatah Svakatah Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantah Stohya Badrani Vidunoti Sukhrit Satam. If we again and again, despite of all the difficulties, despite of all the cheating tendencies, hear Srimad Bhagavatam and speak about Srimad Bhagavatam, Srinvatah Svakatah Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, this katha of Srimad Bhagavatam, they themselves capable of making our soul pure. Punya Shravana Kirtan. They bring us punya. In the beginning, they bring us some sukriti. But ultimately, Hridyantah Stohya Badrani Vidunoti Sukhrit Satam, the sukhrit, the best friend which is there in our heart, he will clean our heart. And therefore, the process is automatic in this sense. Many times Prabhupada said that Krishna conscious process is very easy. But very easy does not mean, it doesn't mean that it's mechanical. It doesn't mean that you can really turn off your brain and practice Krishna consciousness. Easy means that you don't have to do anything extra. You just have to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam again and again and again. And Prabhupada, if we read his first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which explains the complete methodology of studying Srimad Bhagavatam, he again and again stresses this point that we have to listen Srimad Bhagavatam from proper source. Only then, nashta prayashva vadrishu nityam bhagavata sevaya, bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. All the abhadras, all the anarthas will be cleansed from our heart. And then tadarajas tamo bhavam kamaloba dayaschaye tata etar anavidham cheta etar anavidham sattva prasidati. Our soul will be clarified by this sattva. Cheta etara navidham. The kama and loba will not pierce our consciousness. Cheta eta anavidham. The kama and loba will still be there, somewhere on the background of our consciousness, because it's not yet the completely pure stage. But they will not be able to control us. So this is a gradual process of Krishna consciousness, but the basis, the very foundation of Krishna consciousness is this: Srinvatah Svakatah Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Again and again and again, every day we have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Katha, and Bhagavad Katha includes the Katha of his pure devotee, of Krishna's pure devotee. If we talk about him, it's very purifying for the heart. It will purify our heart from all these cheating propensities, cheating tendencies, and ultimately, hopefully, at one point, we will be able to experience the pure happiness of bhakti, which is again the pure energy of Lord's knowledge and bliss combined. So this is few words. I didn't speak much about preaching, book distribution, this and that, but this is Swarup of Prabhupada's mission. His manifestation, Harinams, book distribution, everything else, we know it very well. But at the same time, we have to understand Swabhav, the feelings which is behind that. If we do all these things, distribute books and do Harinams, but the feelings will be different. It will not be the same. It will still purify us. There is no doubt about it. It will still bring a lot of benefit to us. But we also have to understand in which mood, in which consciousness we have to do this mission of Prabhupada. What is the consciousness behind this? And the consciousness behind this is, again, very precious and very rare. Being completely pure ourselves and the burning desire to bring everyone else, to raise everyone else to the same level of purity. Complete, absolute, uncompromising purity. And this together will help us to become followers of Srila Prabhupada. Doing what he wanted us to do, but doing this in a proper mood, in a proper consciousness, with the proper understanding of his desire in his heart. Again, this is my humble understanding of Prabhupada and his mission. I feel very much ashamed because Urmila Mataji is here and others are here. So please forgive me for any offenses or anything. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Can you explain Daksha, who saw Lord Vishnu and experienced Bhava, and still continued in self-deception?
Um, self-deception is very deeply rooted within our heart. I don't think that Daksha really experienced pure bhava. According to the philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam, he was experiencing some shadow of bhava, bhava bhas. And bhava bhas is very powerful. Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says that in bhava bhas you can have all the sattvika bhavas, all the symptoms of your, sattvika bhavas may be there. Still it's a bhas, it's a shadow of pure bhav. Therefore the self-deception was not completely uprooted. In case of Dhruva Maharaj, we can see the transformation which he took place. He started worshipping Krishna, having Anya Bilash, the different desire in his heart. When he saw Krishna, then he was repentful. He regretted that he had this Anya Bilash. And he asked Krishna to fulfill his pure desire, to stay with the other devotees and to hear the katha which is coming out from the mouths of other devotees. But still, even in this case, Krishna said, for 36,000 years you will be the king. And it basically means that Krishna, even though Dhruva Maharaj himself didn't see the trace of other desires within his heart, Krishna saw them. And Krishna said, you're not yet ready. You need some time. Short time, 36,000 years. And then it will be done. So it's not such a quick process. And because we're habituated for self-deception, we see something, but it's too painful to see everything which is there in our heart. Others, they see better when they look at us. But unfortunately, we don't recognize their sometimes perceptiveness properly and don't appreciate it. But again, it's not an easy tendency to deal with. You may experience bhava bhas and still keep some independence within the heart.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Сегодня с утра на лекции по Джайватму давал лекцию, сказал, что Прабхупада говорил, что не обязательно кроме психологии, не нужна психология, не нужна астрология, не нужна остальное, нужно предаться Кришне, сначала по Кришне Бхагаватам. Вот. В каких случаях все-таки нужна помощь психолога, преданным? Есть эти случаи?
The question is, кто сказал это?
Джайватма Махарадж.
Джайадвайта Махарадж. Jayadvaita Maharaj said that the help from the psychologist is not needed to the devotee. You can chant Hare Krishna. Is there any cases when the professional help is necessary? It's a very difficult question in one sense, because Srila Rupa Goswami, he very decisively says that the practice of bhakti is independent. And it basically means that you can solve all your problems by the practice of bhakti alone, including your psychological problems. I'm sure it's possible. If we practice bhakti in the society of pure devotees, or very supportive devotees, with very sincere heart and very sincere desire, and the environment is very good, conducive for our bhakti. And moreover, if the practice of our bhakti is very intense, if we intensely practice Hare Krishna mantra, we can solve all our problems. There is no doubt about it. Psychological problems is nothing but some deeply rooted problems, some deeply rooted anarthas which are there, which are, hindering our process of bhakti. So, Rupa Goswami is very decisive about this. He said that in the beginning stages, he also said actually, in the beginning stages, the jnana and vairagya may help. But then after that, on the more advanced stages of bhakti, they are not necessary. But in the beginning stages, they are helpful. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who came recently, relatively recently, he says in Chaitanya Shikshamrita one peculiar thing. Rupa Goswami rejects Varnashrama, utility of Varnashrama for the practice of Bhakti Yoga completely, entirely, 100%. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that actually, yes, you can practice Bhakti outside of Varnashrama system, but then it will be very difficult. The difficulties will be there. And he says that as a result of your attempts to practice Bhakti, your lifespan will be shortened. And he gave some example of Brigade the Hunter or somebody else. So it's a very peculiar thing, in one sense, Bhakti is independent, and this is the foundation. We have to understand that Bhakti does not require anything outside help. Bhakti itself is a powerful process. And other processes, they may be helpful in the beginning, including Varnashrama, Jnana, and Vairagya. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, he is the first of our acharyas who again said Varnashrama is necessary in this sense. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was, of course, very emphatic about it, and Prabhupada was repeating the same thing, that Varnashrama is necessary. Why? Because it preliminarily purifies the heart, purifies the consciousness from all these problems. Because, in the society which is topsy-turvy, in the modern society which is completely upside down, where there is no proper families, where there is no proper following of the duties, the psychological problems becomes intolerably big. And again, we have to understand that Bhakti alone, if it's practiced with proper intensity, can solve these problems. But again, if these problems are too big, and if there is no society, you can ask for professional help. The problem is that, there is not many genuine, good, professional psychologists. There is a lot of crooks. And therefore, devotees are naturally a little skeptical about these things. But, again, in the beginning, initially, it may be helpful. But even saying this, we have to really understand that Bhakti alone can solve our problems, provided that all the components of Bhakti are in place, and there is an environment which is supportive for us practicing Bhakti. So this is my answer to this question. I completely agree in principle with Jayadvaita Maharaj. Bhakti alone is enough to achieve the complete success. There is no need of practicing anything else, especially what is the problems with psychology or some other things, because they are, they're too subtle. Gross things, it's very difficult to distinguish them or recognize them. But this is little subtle, and there may be some undesirable subtle influences. When we enter into this very close contact with the psychologist, we become open to his garbage. And if he is not a pure devotee, it's very dangerous in a sense, because he can plant plant or water some desires which are there in the heart. That's the problem. Otherwise, because we are living in this completely abnormal world and the psychological problems become so acute, then, sometimes it may give some relief if you are lucky enough to find a professional psychologist who can help you. So that would be my opinion on this question. But of course, on this particular point, you have to ask Bhakti Vikas Maharaj and get his opinion and consider his opinion as a final. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.